All right, we'll call our meeting back to order. I have an eye for the obvious. It looks like our crowd has grown slightly since our 3 o'clock meeting, so I'd like to welcome all of you in attendance and just kind of give you all, I'm sure you already know, but I'm going to overview it again anyway. We received our county manager's recommended budget, I believe on June, roughly the 13th, second Tuesday in May. So we basically had a month to digest his budget, and for the past, I guess the first 30 minutes since 3 o'clock, 45 minutes, we discussed some questions that we had, non-relating to education. We've been holding all of our education questions until all of you can be in attendance. Then we just had about an hour, a little over an hour, closed session meeting regarding potential property acquisition. And we just came out of that, and we're reconvening to have our joint meeting with the Board of Education. So I'd like to again welcome all of you. Dr. Baldwin, welcome. Board, Mr. Breedlove, welcome to all of y'all, and thank y'all for being here. I think that, let me rephrase that, I don't think, I know that everyone in this room has a dire interest in education, and we all want to see the best for our kids, and there's no doubt that we all want to see our children have the appropriate tools and facilities to be successful. I know we have great teachers here. I know a lot of them, and I'm thankful for that. I have 2 children in the Highland School, a high schooler and a middle schooler, and I'm blessed every day to hear their stories of the things that they're doing and watching them grow educationally and mentally and physically every day. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this off to our liaisons, and we'll get this rolling. Just to give you a little history, at our last meeting when the presentation was given, I think there was some immediate questions that came up with the amount of funding going to be provided to the Macon County school system. And at that point, our liaisons were going to meet with the Board of Education. I think that meeting has taken place, and this will be the first time that this board has heard publicly what they've heard, and we're going to start our discussion. So with that, Commissioners Bill and Commissioner Shields. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have our liaison committee meeting along with Dr. Baldwin and staff and finance directors along with the county manager. At that meeting, and if Dr. Baldwin, if you'll come to the podium, please, sir. Just to remind the board, in the county manager's budget, he did increase the outlay from 7.1 to 7.3. At that liaison meeting, Dr. Baldwin presented from Macon County Schools and the school board the shortfalls that they were going to encounter in the upcoming budget year. In front of you, you have that. Dr. Baldwin, do you have that sheet?
Yes, sir.
If you will look, board, at the expenditures, if you look at the revenue sheet, Dr. Baldwin is here to answer any of those questions that you might have. And if you look at the expenditures, and of course he can answer those questions much better than Mr. Shields or myself. And we went through these line by line, and Mr. Shields and I and the county manager have also went through these line by line. And if you will, this also has a back page to it. I'd ask you not to flip over and look at that also. So Mr. Baldwin, I would ask that, first of all, there's still a shortfall, board, of basically, when you boil everything down on the expenditure side, when it comes down to the teachers and the shortfall they're going to have on this sheet of roughly, if you look at the total differences of about, it says $438,000, but there's really some other expenditures here that rounds it up to almost $500,000 that we're still short, even with the $200,000 that the county manager put in his budget. Now, if you want to go line by line, Dr. Baldwin is here, and he can certainly answer those questions along with their liaison committee meeting. And on the teachers, if you kept up and been reading the shortage on the teachers, and I will throw this out there, Dr. Baldwin, in reading the budget from the legislature, and you've also read what little we can read and what we can understand. I see nothing in that budget that will be more that would benefit the shortfalls that are listed on this sheet, right or wrong.
That's correct.
So basically, board, what you see here are the shortfalls still in the budget for the Macon County school system for this upcoming year, and it's roughly it's right at $500,000. So with that, Dr. Baldwin, I would ask that you add a comment to our meeting and how we come up with that, and any of these numbers you'd like to clarify. And Mr. Shields, if you want to add to that too.
And during your comments, just want to make sure we're at the maintaining level. There's no expansion. Right. We're trying to survive.
Correct.
Okay.
Just to add to what you said, Mr. Beal, in 2018-19, you can see that our projected revenues are $8.3 million. That's in the 2018-19 column under revenues, about halfway down the first side of the page. If you flip over to the back, you see that our expenditures and the budget that we presented are $8.8 million, and that would be to maintain our current level of service. Now that's a difference of $478,000, $478,269 to be exact. What we've done is gone through, and this is just a preliminary run through. The board has not approved any of these reductions that I have outlined here in red. I just simply went through the line items and looked at areas that we could possibly cut. That is by no means the only places that we could cut or for consideration. Of those, PRC 001, 3 teaching positions, that would reduce our expenditures by $150,000. If we eliminated digital textbooks,
it's right here.
red.
Yeah, here. Classroom teachers. What were your numbers again on
350, roughly $50,000 per. So 3 teachers, $150,000. Salary and benefits.
Pardon?
Salary and benefits cost us about $50,000. So $150,000. That's 3 positions.
You're going to lose those.
We would reduce those expenditures.
You're talking about reducing the position or an actual teaching a person.
Well, what we do is hopefully we'd have 3 positions that folks would retire or leave the system over the summer, and we would not replace those 3 positions. Now, if 3 positions don't leave over the summer, then we'd have to consider eliminating someone.
And these are locally funded positions.
Correct.
They're not state.
Correct.
And just to clarify for everybody, how does the state determine what is a funded position?
The state allots
number-wise.
The state allots us in 2017-18. The state allotted us 200.5 positions based on our ADM, and that's at 1 teacher for every 18 kindergarten students, and so on. So 200.5, and we have right now about 21 locally paid teachers. So we could eliminate 3 of those positions and reduce our expenditures by $150,000. We could also, with the 21, we could theoretically eliminate 21 positions and save $1.2 million. So 3 is a number that, that's as far as I would be comfortable going. Any further than that, we're going to be in some real desperate situations, which is not to say that we're not pretty desperate right now. We've already lost art and music at the middle school and positions like that.
And then there are other locally funded positions within the school system.
That's correct.
Other than teachers.
That's correct.
Being?
You can have locally funded maintenance workers, locally funded custodians, clerical workers, We try to keep most of our custodians on state. Angie basically plays a shell game, gets those folks on state because if there is a workman's comp case, the state would pick up the workman's comp. If they're on local, we'd have to pick that up. So we try to keep custodians on state, receptionists on local. But you could pay for either one of those out of state.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Next, technology. Eliminate $45,000 from technology, which would basically be digital textbooks. We could also reduce our teacher assistant expenditures. Right now, we're funding about $151,000 of our teacher assistant expenditure out of local. We could reduce that by $32,000 by taking 2 full-time positions and reducing those to part-time. And again, that would be through attrition, not outright reducing someone's pay, unless it came down to it and we had to.
Chris, hold right there while you're on that one. Why does that number increase from 17 to 19?
From 17 to 19, 2 reasons. First of all, with the class size law, we had to add additional K-3 classrooms. I think one was at Highlands and one was at Iowa Valley.
I think we had more students, and we ended up having to have an extra whole class, so we had to have an assistant. Our kindergarten raised last year, and we have our preschool teachers also come in with concerns with our classes being together. They're large, and then they all have concerns.
So I guess what I'm seeing it there is that what you want that number to be is 183,000 if you reduce.
No,
or do you want it to be?
Our budget is.
You want it to be 151, but you could potentially reduce it.
Well, we would have to reduce.
You would have to.
Yeah.
If we don't. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah. So take 2 full-time and reduce those to part-time.
Okay.
Instructional supplies, right now we provide the teachers in Macon County through our local funding about $100,000 for instructional supplies. We could reduce that by $50,000. And what we do with determining how those instructional supply monies go out, we take a base for each school and then provide an ADM allotment. So we could reduce that by $50,000, reduce expenditures by that amount. Transportation, we could reduce $50,000. Actually, this would be a reduction in expenditures. What we would do for consideration is charge 55 cents per mile for activity bus travel, generate about $45,100 based on an 82,000 mile travel for our activity buses last year. We'd still need to find about $5,000 reduction somewhere in transportation, but that would be one way to make up $50,000 actually revenue rather than an expenditure reduction.
Is that instructional or athletics or both of them?
That would be any time the activity buses roll, they'd be charged 55 cents per mile.
Each child?
No, the activity bus. If it moves, we charge 55 cents per mile travel. It would be for the field trip. It would be for whatever athletic participation.
Would the students have to make a contribution towards that?
Well, that's not been determined. Okay. It's possible that they could come from student fees. It's possible that we could charge the athletic department. It's possible that we could charge the field trip, the class. If they do fundraisers, it could come out of that, and it could be a simple fee. We haven't gone that far with it. Athletics, we could reduce expenditures by $43,000 roughly by eliminating what we pay out for officials. Right now, we pay for half of the cost of officials in our schools. Macon Middle School, Highlands, and Nantahala and Franklin High School. And the other half has to come out of the gate or the athletic department.
So Chris, I know you explained that to me, but could you also... Highlands and Nantahala was having a hard time getting by with that cut you made on us before. We just had
back in 12-13, we actually eliminated that completely.
Yeah. And then I remember I came back to you and I think
we did bring back part of it
for that because our athletics was having a hard time with that. So I'm just asking, you're saying that you could do that, but so we would just be back on our same boat with not being able to possibly.
We would have to come up with the funds some other way than the local appropriation.
Okay, I know you tried to explain it to me the other day, I'm just trying to make sure I understand because I know it was an issue for us.
Sure.
How did your non-revenue sports pick up the slack and paying referees?
That would be something that we would have to do either through the athletic department at each school. Obviously, at Franklin High School, it's probably going to come out of the football gate more than it already is. Nantahala and Highlands is going to have a tough time.
I believe I was on the school board when we had that discussion.
Macon Middle School as well.
Or something. Yes. Okay.
The other remaining part of that $43,000 is also pool rental and field maintenance. There's about $13,000 of field maintenance, fertilizer, and that paint and that sort of thing that we'd have to come up with some other way. Board expenses, we pay when a lot of this school safety came up a few years ago, and we felt like we appreciate the SROs that we have, and in order to encourage and to recognize them for the services that they provide, we provide lunches for any law enforcement through our schools, and those are the only folks that eat in our school cafeterias, and we fund those. Teachers pay their lunches, administrators, custodians, they all pay their lunches, but we provide the lunches for our law enforcement because we appreciate their presence on our campus.
But we'd lose that.
That's one option.
Right. Okay.
$3,700 there I threw in my travel and cell phone.
Okay.
I don't want either one of them. $9,700 was travel for principals. And then we'd also, an option would be to reduce maintenance budget by $50,000. And that's general maintenance for schools, like if a doorknob breaks or if Tracy has to replace a window or something like that. That's a $200,000 allotment. We would reduce that to $150,000.
Back to central services there, Chris. Your proposed $9,700 cut brings it down to $61,000.
No, it would be a cut from $61,000
down, and then that's quite a jump
from 26
from
the previous
26.
year.
What changed? Just for principal travel.
That $9,700 is principal travel. Part of that jump, Angie, do you want to?
We moved some things around from. At one time, we had uniforms for the whole district. We purchased uniforms and rent uniforms for our custodians at the schools, and we had those in 806. We moved those to 807 and divvied out. So you can see where 806 decreased, and that was just some moving around of some line items that we had to categories that it seemed more effective to put them in that particular category. So it's not really a change. It's just some shifting around.
What about your steel-toed boots? Are they still?
They're still in there.
In other words,
that's about $4,000.
I felt like that what was the cut you moved over there, or the uniforms? Mm-hmm. I felt like uniforms didn't belong in central office expense. It belonged to central services.
This is the first time I've seen this, and I'm having trying to. So I don't mean to ask a lot of questions for the last getting home from supper. My grandyoung's waiting on me. Let's go through it.
Okay, and then the $50,000 reduction and the $200,000 general maintenance budget.
Back up before we flip the page on non-instructional support.
Non-instructional.
Hit that just a minute. Yeah, the 03.
003.
Yeah.
Non-instructional support, that's the line item that we fund our substitutes, our clerical workers, is that right? And custodians.
Any jumps?
Part of the reason for that jump is when the state enacted the K-3 legislation, they also took away some of Angie's flexibility to move those pots of money around, specifically ESL and AIG. We receive a pot of money for those two educational purposes. English as second language learners and our gifted students. Now, when we received that pot of money, what she was able to do previously was to move those dollars into PRC or actually into PRC 003, which is to pay for the custodians and receptionists. Then she would pay for the ESL teachers and the AIG teachers out of 001, which is a position allotment. Now, the reason that's important is because those ESL teachers and those AIG teachers are generally your most experienced teachers, and they're your more certified teachers. They have master's degrees and that sort of thing. They're more likely to be higher paid. So if she puts them on the position allotment, she could hire 5 PRC 001s at $50,000 per. If she has to use those dollars strictly for ESL and AIG, then that means that more of our ESL teachers and our AIG teachers are going to have to be picked up out of local, or we're going to have to reduce those teachers. And it also means that if we have to keep that money in ESL and AIG, we don't have as much money to put into PRC 003 and pay for custodians.
And principals or assistant principals are not part of that non-instructional.
It's not part of the non-instructional support.
03.
They're over
No.
5.
05.
So we're only funding one partial one principal. Percentage of
Correct.
How many principals? You got 11 principals?
We have 11 principals and how many assistant principals?
I think there's 8. I can check that.
And 4 of those, we don't have the state funding to provide for 4 of those, so some of those come out actually for PRC 001.
And then how many assistant principals is there?
There's 8,
There's actually 5 assistants and 2 lead teachers.
so 7.
7. Good information. Just picking your brain.
Sure.
Chris, it's obvious that, last year you used a fund balance appropriation to make your ends meet. I'm definitely a supporter. I think that you need a fund balance. I know that we're your dire emergency backup at the county level, but I think it's also important for y'all to have some funds where you don't have to necessarily come ask us for money. After you completed that, how much will this leave in your fund balance?
Angie can update that. The last projection that we had was about $900,000 total. $600,000 that we can actually lay our hands on. $300,000 is in Medicaid, pre-K, summer adventure camp, VIP, those sort of things. Angie, is that pretty much staying the same?
This may be a question you can't answer, but I'm going to try it anyway. You obviously have been able to build up a fund balance in the past. How is that? What does that come from? State funding or our funding or a combination of both?
It comes from the fund balance is totally locally funded, and it's
Okay.
what that means is we can't build fund balance off state dollars. So in order for us to build a fund balance, we have to reduce positions, or you have to give us more
Sure.
than our expenditures.
Sure.
So when you move through all of those, the possible reductions of expenditures that I mentioned, that leaves us still about $39,000 that we're looking for. So if we do all of those reductions, we're still about $40,000 short.
Mr. Let me add to the fund balance question. It fluctuates. If you remember, the legislature one time was going to do away with the driver's ed. It goes back several years. It goes, and we put money into that, if you remember, Dr. Baldwin. But at the end of the day, we talk about percentage of fund balance, and I agree an institution like Macon schools need a fund balance. Well, if you want to go percentage-wise, at $600,000 is what they can use. That's 1.5% of their total budget.
It's a month's pay, though, too, right?
Month payroll.
Barely.
Yeah, they'll wipe it out.
Barely. So that was, and that played a lot into our discussions on the recommendations that Mr. Shields and I talked about with the county manager and meeting with the liaison committee, that 1.5% of the fund balance, and I think we all agree that Macon County Schools needs a fund balance, and at 1.5% is not a whole lot for a fund balance. So that played a part into it. Now, and during our discussions, and if you look at the sheet, we talked about a lot of things. That Macon County has invested over the past few years, close to $50 million in new schools to Macon County, which is wonderful, and we're glad to do that, and glad we have. But in doing all that, and Mr. Shields can certainly speak for himself, and I want him to, but I think, and Mr. Shields can agree, and I think Mr. Shields agrees, that it's also time we make the school system whole in their funding for two reasons. Number one, this is what it takes for them to operate. And you can go back through and you can look through everything that Angie's got in her lap. You can go back through all those numbers and you can sit and go through all the numbers, or we've got a great relationship with the school board and we can crunch all the numbers and get down to the nitty-gritty. But at the end of the day, when we've invested $50 million to provide the children of Macon County a good school system, we need to be able, this is a new norm in school funding. This is what the legislature has put to us, and this is a new norm. The counties is either going to have to fund it, or you're going to lose, or we're going to be backing up, Dr. Baldwin. This is my opinion, and this is where we're at.
I mean, that's it. Without the revenues, these cuts will have to be made, or similar cuts will have to be made.
And this is just where we're at, Mr. Chairman. This is either we fund, and yes, we can nitpick this, we can go down through it and say, well, we can cut this or we can cut that. But at the end of the day, and we've sat here for years and tried to, but in my opinion, and me and Mr. Shields has talked about it, I want Mr. Shields to speak to it too, that at the end of the day, this is going to be the new norm in funding school. We all know that, sitting here. So, and
just
so,
to add what you said about fund balance, Mr. Bill, if you go back to 08-09, 2009-10, Macon County Schools had about a $3 million fund balance. And had we not had that fund balance, I don't know how we would have made it through the recession as well as we did. I know the county stepped in 2012-13, I think it was. At that time, our fund balance had dipped to $279,000. We had to make significant cuts along with an infusion from the county. We made those cuts. Then the teacher assistant cut was supposed to happen from the state, driver's ed. Our fund balance went back up because those things didn't happen. Now we've been having to utilize fund balance for the last couple of years, and it's down to the point where we can't use anymore. My concern now, though, is that I'm not an economist, but I'm old enough now that I know that the economy is cyclical, and right now we're trending up, and at some point we're going to trend down, and our fund balance is not in a position where it's going to be able to help us very much.
What would you, in your opinion, what would your recommended fund balance be? Not a percentage, but just a quantity.
We've talked to auditors, looked at the LGC, what they recommend. I've looked at other school systems. I've talked to former superintendents, Mr. Crawford particularly, and what Mr. Crawford said that he tried to always do is keep $500,000 in appropriated and $500,000 in unappropriated, which would be over $1 million in total fund balance.
Okay.
We're obviously not there, and that was 18 years ago.
Okay.
But the budget was probably not quite half what it is now.
Okay.
But now this board, they sort of serve as a quasi-fund balance. When you all get in bind, and we appreciate, as Ronnie said, the working relationship that y'all have, like the Highlands Gym, we're there as a backup.
And that's accurate, and we appreciate that relationship.
The HVAC, the vocational building, the addition to the supplement last year. Those are things that this board has been willing, and other boards previously, to step in and say, hey, we know your fund balance is hurting.
And I agree with you and appreciate that. I would say that the only real difference in what we're looking at with a fund balance when we talk about a school system as opposed to a county, what we have to look at with the school system is that payroll. And we never know for sure what the state's going to do. We've had reversions from the state, throughout the school year that we may have to pick up several positions. Angie, do you want to speak to some of the reversions that we were having there in the late 08-09 10, 11, and 12. And it was, sometimes it was $800,000.
$1 million a pop.
Those have lessened now.
They don't exist right now.
Yeah.
But that's something that can happen in an economic downturn. So that's we would use our fund balance for payroll is the big issue of our concern.
And that's one of the reasons for a fund balance.
Correct. That's especially for a school system.
Or, yeah, an emergency.
I think the obvious thing here is we're trying to maintain.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That's sad that we don't have. We hope the state can help us in the expansion part of it. And I've spoken to you about this. My greatest concern is we haven't passed a budget. We will on the 19th. You've got a hiring freeze on. When the people graduated from Western Carolina University, 2 or 3 weekends ago, on Monday morning, they didn't come across Cowee. They went across Balsam. It is so hard for a principal to hire qualified or quality people waiting this late. So, and that's our responsibility to get your needs there. And you may be going on to this. I don't want us to leave without talking about capital outlay. Okay.
Do you all have a copy of that capital outlay request? Are there any questions before we move on into that?
Well, no, we want to stay with this just a second. The recommendation from the liaison committee, to show what this liaison committee is requesting from this board is that we do make the school budget whole, and to make that whole, what we're requesting is $500,000.
Current expense.
It's a current expense, and that will make this budget whole as we move forward. Now let's talk about, while we're on that, we can have that discussion of where that money is going to come from and how we're going to do that. We are making that recommendation. That makes this budget whole. That makes them, and I'll assure you that when Chris comes back next year, we hope that he can add to the fund balance. But he don't know that. We don't know that. But that is going to be the recommendation. Mr. Hughes, if you want to speak to that recommendation, please do so.
For the current expense, or are you talking about the capital outlay?
The current expense.
Well, as I said there a while ago, we're still at minimum. You're maintaining.
Maintain current level.
The monies that the liaison is going to recommend to this board here is $500,000 to cover you. And really, that's bringing you up to minimum. And that's what will be recommended to this board here for current expense, $500,000.
We appreciate that.
Now, we'll move on and talk about the capital outlay. And this was brought up after that discussion, and we just went directly, we just went directly to capital outlay, and I asked the question, because it's what's on everybody's mind, was the safety and security issues. And that's what we centered on, and it was brought up by this side of the liaison committee, not that side of the liaison committee. And we talked about the safety and security. And if you don't think it's important, if you just review what happened last week, it's very important. So we talked about it and what was necessary for what the schools really needed. And I asked the superintendent at that time, if he had some extra money, what would he put it to in safety and security? Because that's what's on the mind of every teacher that wakes up, what's on this man's mind that's his responsibility at the end of the day. Dr. Baldwin, I'm sorry, but it is. I mean, we can sit here and talk about it all day, but you all wake up with it on your mind. And Jimmy and people that has kids in school does. So we centered on safety and security. We talked about all those items you see listed there. And what this liaison committee came up with, along in discussions with the liaison committee, Chairman Breedlove and Dr. Baldwin, and the board members are, Mr. Goldsmith, Mr. Cabe, and so we had that discussion. And so what this liaison committee is also going to recommend is $250,000 for safety and security to the school system to be used where they see is, because they've had some personnel in, some security experts, and along with the sheriff, they've been very involved. Macon County Sheriff's Department been very involved, and to spend where they think is very necessary. I mean, we were at the middle grade school looking at their cameras, and Carl has educated me on cameras more than I ever wanted to know. But it's they're old cameras, and I can't see too good anyway without my Walmarts, but they're awful. They're terrible. And they just, and I know cameras is not the question. We don't know what the answer to all this security stuff is, Dr. Baldwin, but we do know we need to do some things. We all agree. You agree. We all agreed that day. So, Mr. Chills, if you want to speak to that, since we brought it up.
Having the opportunity to serve on your school security committee, recently, it was definitely an eye-opening at Union Academy. Union Academy is probably one of your most secure schools in Macon County. But whether it's a positive or negative, the intruder allowed us to see our strengths and weaknesses. And we've been there to look at the weaknesses part.
Certainly thank goodness for the SRO we had down there.
Definitely. And lifesaver. And so then tomorrow morning we're meeting at Franklin High School. I think one of the things we've talked about, we need to quit talking and do things where people can visually see what we're doing. And I think the high school tomorrow will be
it's a matter of appearance, but it's also anything that we do is to buy us a few seconds.
Right.
Hopefully, if we can buy a few seconds, we can get kids to safety. The SRO can get in place if there is something. I wish that I could say that everything that we did here would reduce our chances of injury or worse to zero, but it doesn't. All we're doing is trying to buy some time.
We have a responsibility as a governing group here to be part of that plan and make sure it gets to be in place. Not to make sure we trust you to do that, but to make sure we provide you funds to implement your plan.
And so, Mr. Chairman, this is, and you can speak to those about the safety and security and how we came up with that number. We tried to devise what we thought would, to bring to this board, Dr. Baldwin, and the items we thought would be by your recommendation and the liaison's recommendation to bring to this board. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the two recommendations that your liaison committee is bringing to this board. And we know that that's two big recommendations. We realize that. But we also realize that the safety and security is a big issue, and we think we think really and truly that the safety and security it's almost a must in some of these, and if Mr. Breedlove or Mr. Goldsmith or Mr. Caber, that was during that discussion, will speak to that, that's fine. They're certainly welcome to. And on the other part, we know that that's a lot of money, but we also had that discussion that we just feel strongly it's time to make the budget of Macon County school systems whole, and we'll take it from there, because this is we're in the new age, and it's a new norm for funding of the school systems, and it's time to realize that. We've always hoped that they'd do this or do that, and the state will do this or do that. Well, it ain't happened. Is that in the real word? Yes, it is. So this is where we're at, and that's the recommendation for this liaison committee.
So the recommendation would be the current expense allocation would be 7,845.
500,000.
To that
480.
That's right.
478.
That's exactly right.
478, 269, and we rounded off to 500,000. That's
because there's a burnt bus there's a burnt bus with $8,000, you're only going to get, we understand it, you're only going to get $8,000 for the bus.
The insurance, we do get to put it up for bid.
We can sell the motor maybe. So that's another, what, $15 or something.
Bid on this
So,
Friday.
I mean,
Did you have a question about that? Was there a question we were trying
No,
to?
I was just clarifying, just to make sure I understood.
Okay. Then the 2.5 or 250,000 for your
Up to
capital outlay.
850.
Well,
it's earmarked for safety and security,
yeah.
The 250.
the 250, and that's the two recommendations.
So out of your recommendation, I'm sorry, we're a little slow on this. It's the first time three of us have seen
That's right.
these outlays tonight, so we're digesting this. So so we're saying you basically have a capital outlay request of 3.179,
Yes,
and
sir.
we're suggesting 850,000
Right.
of the 3.1. So
you got
less
6,000.
than
It's
about
in there.
25%
Yeah.
of what it is.
Well, and we had that discussion, and what we said of these items, we know we can't do it all, and at one time we can't. It's one bite at a time. What's the most
I wish we had
important?
the checks.
I wish we had, but and so we centered on the safety and security out of all these things, and knowing that if Tracy comes to us and needs that something on maintenance, this board, I don't think, Tracy, since I've been here, has ever refused. If something, we got to fix it. If it's cold, we got to heat it. If it's too hot, we got to cool it. So, but the safety and security is always been on somebody's mind, but never to the extent it is today. So that's where we centered it at, and we picked the items that we thought was most important. Right, Dr. Baldwin?
Yes, sir.
That's where we came up.
So, Ronnie, I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah.
Capital's 850,000. Period. Of which
If you're doing the
250
you're doing the 600,000 plus 250,000. Yeah, you got what you're saying.
It's 850,000.
That's right.
Of the 850,000, 250 is security.
That's right.
Right. And 300 of that 600, I believe it's IT technology. Then the other three. So really, you've got 250 and 300,000, but you've got IT that's picking up it says there in the book that it's 300,000 for IT. So you're correct in your total estimate.
And so, along with that recommendation, what we do is ask between now and
19.
as soon as we can is for the county manager and Mr. Baldwin and Angie and Lori to get together and look at every avenue that they can to see if there's anywhere else that any numbers that they can crunch. And I think they might be somewhere they can find that, but we've tried that over the years, not been too successful. But I'm asking that be part of it. I think that's just good management. But in the meantime, we'll also ask the county manager, to bring some recommendations back to this board on the two recommendations to give this board opportunity to discuss it.
Derek, last year, wasn't it 300,000 for IT?
You're right.
Yes, sir. Okay. And I'm just noticing up here, it's 618,874 to get it on the 5 and 7 year replacements. So we funded 300 last year, so we're taking them, doubling it, and then we're funding it at 300 again this year. So we're taking kindergartners, and they're going to have the same computer when they graduate from high school.
You're probably right. On that 300,000, Ms. Lori will have to speak up to that. A few years ago, we were trying to keep.
We got 1.5.
1.5. And that $300,000
is already aged out. So
Yes.
that's all.
And so,
Now, Tim, in his budget, I think has how much million, Tim?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
How much is in your total IT budget?
Well, the capital outlay budget should be about $618,000. That's what it takes to be on a 5-year refresh.
But your current expense is 750, 770. We've got it right here. $757,000 is the current expense, and then you have $300,000 in
Which
capital.
is about 1.1 million, I think.
And then the state, what is the state's allocation for that line item?
For technology.
Yeah, technology.
Technology, we get about $30,000 a year out of the state. If we're lucky, that's fines and forfeitures.
You can turn them off.
We get about $16,000 plus fines and forfeitures, and that's about $30,000.
Does any of the E-rate go to that, Dr. Ball?
It does, and E-rate, if you'll notice there, it's got a minus the E-rate match right there on that same line item. The total is on $25,000. How much did we have in E-rate last year, and it's running out this year?
Well, we only applied for, let me look at that just quickly. We only applied for E-rate for phones and internet in the past. We were hoping to apply for E-rate for internal connections, which are switches and routers and things of that nature. They would pay for about 80% of those devices, which is about 25,000, 18,000, and 36,000. No, I'm sorry, 18,000 and 25,000. I'm sorry. That's what we would. That's 20% of the total cost of the switches and routers. So that's our cost. E-rate would cover the rest of that, or 80% on top of that amount.
So 25,000 plus 18,000, 43,000 is the 20%.
That's the 20% portion. Yeah.
And by doing that, that frees up local capital money that could have previously been that you would have had to use to replace those switches and routers that can now be used towards computer replacement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
You get from 300,000 to 618 with 43,000.
That 43,000 is only 20%. The other 80%, which they would be getting from E-rate funding, is
How much was the total E-rate last year?
We didn't apply for E-rate. Yeah, that was for the previous year. That was
48,000, 20%, and 240,000.
No, how much was our E-rate?
22,000.
No, that's something different than what we're talking about.
But we're still on the same page though with what I did with.
It would cost us
$240,000 if you had not have gotten that grant. Now you're going to have that grant, so that money is essentially 80% grant funded, which can now be used toward replacing the computer, about $240,000.
But I won't be able to apply for those if we don't get the full funding.
Right.
I won't buy those switches. And
So that there again, that's where the full funding would help you to.
Right. Yeah. Okay. The other E-rate that we get is for internet connections, and that is gone. That is no longer applicable towards phones and internet services. So we didn't apply for it this year, and we won't get it next year. That showed up as a revenue on our current expense in previous years, and that funding's gone. So we're picking that up out of local. That's another thing that's costing us more money out of local that E-rate used to supply. So.
Tim, can I ask you to clarify for Carl's question? Can I ask you one thing? Yes. I think what Carl was saying is the 618, after everything's considered, 618 puts us on a 5-year refresh to maintain our technology for the students.
Right. That's
everything that's taken into account, E-rate, whatever it is. The question is, that's what it would take to keep a 5-year refresh with everything else accounted for. So I think that's what your question is.
And we would also have to apply for E-rate for that other 240-some-thousand.
But once that E-rate's applied for, that other 240,000, if he gets that money and can use that capital money to replace switches and routers, then that 240,000 is essentially freed up and can go combined with the $300,000 local funding for computer replacement.
No,
because you wouldn't be.
No, that's on top. We would need 800 and some thousand to do what we're asking here.
We budgeted the E-rate as revenues.
So this is just our 20% of the cost, and that's included in the $618,000. If we wanted to actually put those switches and routers and things on a 5-year refresh, it would cost us $243,000, of which $43,000 is what it would cost the county or cost us, which is included in the $608,000. Does that make sense?
Student mental health.
And going back to Ronnie's question, your total budget is what?
$1,057,000. $1,057,000.
Okay, and the county IT budget is?
$1,054,000 when you take out the $500,000 in capital expenditures.
So their capital's in this too. Right. So it'll be 1.5. The county total's big 1.5.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many employees does the county got?
We have 8 in IT.
No. How many employees?
360.
Okay, in the counties, the school board, how many?
We've got about 340 classroom teachers, 600 employees,
Total
but that
employees.
would include bus drivers and cafeteria workers. And,
I was just trying to correlate, so 600 employees to 1 point.
$1,057,000 would be what we
1,057.
budget this year.
3, what'd you say, through 160 to 1.5? Okay.
15 departments. You're talking about running the NC Fast system, the health department system.
How many students do we have, Dr. Baldwin? I mean, the students are the ones that have the technology in it.
We've got 40, between 44 and 45
I mean,
students.
that's the ones that we should, which we need to concentrate on, having the right technology in their hands, we're trying to get in, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's good. That's good.
NC Fast ought to take up $900 million. Just load up again.
Paul, any questions? Paul, were you finished? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, I just had a couple of comments before we close it out. I mean, I think we're going to, is this,
I was going to get the questions, and I was going to give us a little comment.
okay, no,
Kinda how we feel.
I've got a couple comments when we get through.
All right, are there any further comments, Commissioner Shields? Any further questions?
I was trying to find something from the state that they'd allotted. And I couldn't remember if it was for IT or what it was for. Mr. Beal and I were looking at today. We're Tier 1. And you got,
The state has allotted $12 million, but they're going to divide it up into all 3 counties, 1, 2, and 3. And when you break it all down, and there's a formula for that, we'd ended up with, I think, about $12,340. It is a Tier 1 county out of the 12 million.
so
2 Pepsis and Moonbite. So.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I throw out something from a teacher's perspective?
Absolutely.
Y'all are throwing numbers. They're over my head right now. But let's go back to technology. We're talking about a lot of this technology is the textbook. That's technology these days. It wasn't when we went to school. If we don't have enough of those, then in order to teach the classes, this happened 2 years ago. The thing with instructional supplies, the teachers then, if they don't have these computer textbooks for the children, then they have to spend every day after school running off copies on copy machines from their old textbook to hand those things to the kids. 2 years ago, the contract, the amount of money we spent for that was over with before Christmas. The teachers were coming to their husbands' offices, every place that they could go to get things, to get copies made out of their own pocket, because we didn't have enough of the technology textbooks, and we didn't have enough instructional supply and money in the contract. So we added $25,000 more. And we are very, very grateful for the change in the operating expenses you're talking about. But that just goes to show that that daily operation how important that is, how these things tie together. You don't have enough textbooks, you better get a whole lot more paper. You know, and so all these things tie together, and that's why they're so important. When Ms. McCall mentioned how many students we have that have to have these things, the technology to operate on now. Thank you for your time.
But I also want to say, when I looked at this, instructional supplies, when you take that away, teacher, get your pocketbook out. That's what you do. You supplement that. That's what's not right.
All right, Commissioner Bill?
I think we've covered everything I want to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Higgin?
Just comments?
Make some comments, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Baldwin, and you, teachers, whomever. You know, we like I say, this is the first time we've seen this, so we're going to go through this, and I don't know what I've heard the term fully fund or whole make whole. I don't know what that term means, because all of our departments in the budget process, well, they'll request a certain amount, and they're graciously funds what is appropriate for that department. So I don't know what that term is, but as a graduate of Franklin High School, I think that kind of gave me enough in life. Went on to college and somewhat survived the world based on my education in Macon County. So I'm very supportive of it. But, you know, we received a lot of emails. There's been a lot of stuff about education on state level, people going to Raleigh, picking, and all this stuff, and at a national level. And then we got inundated with quite a few emails here locally. And it seemed that the tone of those emails was that this Board of Commissioners or Macon County did not fully support public education. And that was what I took away from these. And I just kind of want to highlight a couple of things that how taxpayer dollars are spent that the general public probably doesn't know about as far as education goes. Now, on the state level, I think, you know, and I'm not a state regulator, I don't know anything about that, but I've looked a little bit at their budget, and I think this year they're throwing another $700 million increase in is that still in there?
I don't know what it's going to be right now.
That's proposed, and then I think since 13-14, there's been about a 20% increase at the state level on teacher salaries, which includes a 6% this year or something.
I understand that is proposed at this point. I think the General Assembly's passed this on
For a certain block of teachers.
Yes.
For a certain block. It's not. There's nothing in education.
Well, and just to go back to what y'all were discussing earlier, I think that a lot of times that increase, and no doubt that dollar does go up every single year, just like y'all's budget goes up every single year. But a lot of it's been eaten up by retirement costs and health benefits, just like that's impacted your budget. When you see that $700,000 increase, imagine the increase that y'all had with 340 employees, with the employees that we have, state-paid employees in Macon County. Imagine the benefit increase that goes along with those employees. Absolutely. So when you factor that amount in there, you know, that $700,000 may be maintaining what you currently have. It may not be.
Exactly. And there's so much, I don't know how you finance people keep up with all this.
Well, I'm not a finance person, and it's real hard for me.
Angie, if I want to know something about finance, I don't ask any of these guys. I won't ask her. Or if I want to know about school, I'll ask Angie. I do not see how the finance departments keep up with all this funding and shifting, and it's phenomenal. And I appreciate both finance departments for doing that. But now locally, we still owe about $30 million. The taxpayers of Macon County are in debt about $30 million. The majority of that is for school buildings. In the last 10 years, I think Roy mentioned $50 or $60 million has been put into school buildings in Macon County. We still owe $30 million. And each year we continue to make improvements to existing buildings. I think just recently we just got the bids in on the South Macon expansion. That's about $3 million. That's going to go in as a debt. We finished what the Q's out, the Highlands and the Union Academy. That was what? That was about $3 million. Those were completed. Replaced the Highlands gym roofs that had been leaking for 12 years at $330,000 that were not budgeted. And we'd waited so long to replace it that we couldn't go after the contractor or couldn't go after the architect. Public education, we just recently, we're going to give $1.4 million to the Southwestern Community College burn building, public education. And this year's itemized funding for their current expenses, the supplements, solid waste fees, capital outlay, the Golden Leaf match funds, and debt service is $9.5 million.
Last year.
Last year.
17-18.
Yeah. $9.5 million. The SROs, we're one of only 4 counties in the state, I think. Now, somebody correct me from what I can research. One of only 4 counties in the state that has an SRO at every building, at every school. 2 at the high school, I think. So we've been a little proactive with the prodding of with you guys for safety, and I'm glad that we've done that. So that's $800,000 a year that's reflected in the sheriff's budget. Child Dental Health Services, a Motorola, that's about a $480,000 per year expense. It's reflected in the health department's budget. And that Motorola is a big thing at the schools. I mean, it's big.
Big
School
for teeth.
nurse, pardon?
Big for teeth.
Yeah. School nurses, around $350,000. And these are things that we didn't have when I went to school, and I still got out here with good grades. The school health nurses, around $350,000 a year. That's in the health department's budget. Doesn't reflect it in education. Tobacco education, about $13,000. And the total is about $11.1 million is actually, I mean, you can still shift these numbers, it's all in the pencil, but that's what the total education funding from Macon County taxpayers is. Now,
Do you know how much of that's passed through?
The Motorola's passed through. Several of the things are passed through.
How much of the
What's that,
capital
somebody?
how much of the capital outlay is passed through?
What do you mean, pass through?
Well, for the Article 40 and Article 42.
You're saying it's offset by the revenues,
Yeah.
not really pass through.
But it's state mandated it has to go for capital outlay, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a pass through.
What would you call
What
it?
is that figure?
How would you use it?
It's another revenue source. It's
But it has to go for
It's not
full
county
capital
money.
outlay.
I don't know where Paul got his numbers, but I know we provided a breakdown before, like of every year, this much has to go from the county general fund for capital outlay, because like you're saying, there's lottery revenues, there's the article sales tax 40 and 42.
There's also refunds on the owl and Nantahala.
Yes, there's the
About $400,000 there.
on what?
The QZABs for Nantahala and Owl.
Yeah.
But I know when we
So it's about
present,
$400,000 of that.
But that was how old.
And Nantahala.
but when
Yeah, I
we
didn't-
prepare the budget book, there's that pie chart
Yeah.
we do, and it takes into account all those outside revenues. We only pick up the general fund portion.
Does that come from the North Carolina revenue, from the state, not taxpayers here?
Well, the bottom
No, it's
line, it doesn't matter if it's state, local, federal, whatever. It
It is
comes from one
taxpayers.
place, comes off somebody's hip pocket in the form of a tax or a service fee.
It is a sales tax.
So we're, I think that's kind of a new point. But we do support education. I mean, and I think the state's trying to support it.
Well, look, I'll agree with you. It has improved in the last couple of 3 years from the state side.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And we're optimistic.
And we appreciate the consideration you're giving us today.
K-12 funding that I think Kevin kind of spearheaded.
Absolutely.
So they're chipping away at it.
Yes.
And we just got to be optimistic with it. And in comparison, we've been sitting here earlier today, county employees, we didn't have them down for any raise this year. We hit them with increasing their employee insurance contributions, some of them over $2,000. That's a big hit. Hopefully we can alleviate some of that. The county manager presented a pretty tight budget with no tax increase. And to fully fund all of these requests, there would have to be, if we fully funded or made whole all the departments that came before us to do this budget, there would have to be a pretty significant tax increase. So I appreciate y'all coming. I appreciate tremendously what you do putting this budget together. Your budget's $43 million.
No, I think it's about $40 million
Ours is 43 this year.
total.
43, ours is running, was 49.8, it'll probably be over 50. So that's a lot of money. Taxpayer monies is where it comes from that we dispense throughout this county. And it takes a lot to run government and to educate children. So we appreciate what you all do. We fully trust that you're good stewards of that money, as we try to be. And we appreciate you taking the time and coming and let us digest some of this, but I think it's before this board now. But certainly do appreciate what y'all do.
Thank you. And anytime any questions come up, Angie and I are on the phone.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Hang on, sorry, Chris. A couple more coming. Paul established that education can cost a lot of money, so I'm not going to go there. And there's no doubt that prior boards, prior to me being here anyhow, there have been some serious commitments made to school infrastructure. I think our school reflects that, and I think that those prior boards should be commended for that.
Absolutely.
They made a commitment to do that. But fast forward to here today, first off, I want to say thank you to you and your staff. Thank you to everyone that came out tonight, and thank you to liaisons who obviously spent a fair amount of time and effort getting this boiled down to one sheet of paper that we could all understand. But I think two things that I've heard in these conversations that are cause for concern is any of these budget numbers, cuts that you proposed that hopefully we're not going to go down that road and have further discussions about, but those that are proposed are not, I don't view them as we're trimming a little fat.
No, sir.
They're desperation moves. And so it concerns me that we're to the point that we are, that we're talking about those type of cuts versus some cuts that might not be as detrimental to the educational process. And then the second concern that I have in regards to funding, we're not funding our kids to be prepared necessarily to come back in to the Macon County workforce. Thanks to the internet, the world's flat. And I think that we need to focus on that and focus on measuring from the top down, not the bottom up. And yes, it costs a lot of money to do, but I'm not convinced that at the end of the day that it's not a good investment, and it's one of the best investments that we can make. So I just would close by saying thank you to what you do and what our teachers do. Thank you to what our liaisons have done in trying to bring this to a close. But I think we need to look at the big picture of where we're going, where we want to go with education, and as Ronnie mentioned, the new norm. We need to accept the new norm, embrace it, and figure out how we're going to fund the schools and fund education at the level so we can compete globally.
Well, and if I may just comment on that, back to what Mr. Bill commented and the statement you just made. You talk about competition. What's happened, and it may have been going on prior to the recession, but I think what's happened since the recession is you've seen certain counties in the state of North Carolina that have taken it upon themselves to really contribute to education in that district. That gap is widening across the state of North Carolina. Certain counties are doing a lot. Certain counties are doing much less. And so I appreciate any consideration that you all give to increasing funding in Macon County this year.
I think one thing Carl brought up is that on the Business Advisory Council that you and I serve on, it is most important to them, what you're saying, is that educational component fit the economic environment today. And I'm going to say this, we've had an opportunity to go through Franklin High School and look at the CTE program, Career Technical Education, and to be honest about it, those CEOs from all those industries and some lay people out here, they were really surprised at the quality that the CTE program is produced at Franklin High School. And at the state level, and you've got our skills program, your STEMS program back there, we are doing some things that's best kept secret in town. And but we're still, those CEOs still trying to get us to think a quality workforce. In 2008, as a principal, if I had said something, you need to focus more on vocational education, I'd have been run out of Franklin High School. But today I could say it and get by with it. But in 2008, it was promoting 4-year colleges. You've got to go to college, you've got to go to college. Now we're in that situation where you don't have those people there, and we're trying to restart this engine.
That's accurate, and also I think what the CEOs in that business on that business advisory council saw, and what we're seeing a lot from the research now, is that there's so much that can be gained from the CTE program in terms of critical thinking and creativity, problem solving, and those sort of things, that they learn skills that apply across the curriculum, not just in CTE. We would like to see more kids in CTE and improve their ability to perform well in college.
And I see Carl and I serve on the SEC Board of Trustees, and I see Mr. Bell here. Southwestern Community College is in tune with our needs. And
Southwestern is a tremendous partner for us.
And I don't know if Dr. Thomas is here, but Mr. Bell, you can relay the message. They are a quality program.
They're a big part of that CTE program that you spoke about too.
Right.
All right. Well, I want to close this out. I know that there are several of you out there that would like to address the situation and our discussion tonight. A week from today, next Tuesday night at 6 p.m., we will have a public comment period before we start our normal board meeting. And then the following Tuesday, I don't think, have we set a time for that yet, Derek?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. So next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday, we're going to have our public hearing in regards to the budget. So we'll have another public comment period at that time of not only discussing education, but our entire budget. For those of you that missed the first portion of this meeting around a little after 3, I'd already made the connotation that our county budget, which you can see up on the screen at a little over $49 million, is I equivalated it to being as tight as a banjo string. It kind of twangs right now. We feel like it's that time. So this addition that we're looking at to our budget is going to probably have to come out of our fund balance, which is the red there. Now, why does the county have a fund balance? We've talked about why the school needs it. The county needs it for several reasons too. So yes, the county can afford it, pull it out of fund balance. The problem that I'm immediately seeing and the other commissioners are seeing is yeah, we can afford to pay it, but
One time.
it's not sustainable going on and on. We can't keep an all of that or our piggy bank's going to disappear. But why do we need a big piggy bank? Well, we just are getting financing for our South Macon school. The better financial condition the county's in, one of those conditions that they analyze is how big our fund balance is, the less our interest rates are. I think we're looking at about a 3%, Lori, roughly. Do we know yet?
It's 3.4.
4. What if it was 5.4? We're going to be paying a lot more on that. So the better financial condition, that's one of the things they look at. There's also emergencies, just like the school has. We need to have a fund balance. But the point I just wanted to make is this board, just from the comments I heard, obviously wants to fund this. We want to make it happen. And I got a good feeling that it will happen. We've got to come together as a board and decide how we make it happen. Do we break that banjo string and tighten it to the point it can't handle it anymore? Or do we pull out of our fund balance knowing that it might not be sustainable in years coming? So do we kick that can down the road and we got to look at another way of a revenue stream moving forward? But that's a discussion we'll be having. But just to ease all of your tensions just a little bit, just from the head nods and the stuff, and you've obviously got 2 liaison committee members that are supporting this, that I feel pretty confident that this will go through. We just got to figure out how it's going to happen. So again, I appreciate all y'all coming. Next Tuesday, a week from tonight, and 2 Tuesdays, there'll be some public comment period, and I'm sure you'll be emailing us and letting us know in the meantime, and we're happy to have that. So, all right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Got a second, all in favor?
Let's see. I'm headed over across the line.
See if you can, I'll get the full. Go ahead and knock that out.
Say anything about it, Tommy. So we can get out here.
How are you? Good to see you. Hey, Lori. We're going to meet with them tomorrow at 3.